welcome everybody. To reintroduce myself, I am James Westwood, and welcome back to In Those Shoes, a podcast hosted by LHi. And this is our very first one, and we are blessed to have here with us this afternoon the fearless leader of our New York office, brand leader of Piper Maddox, New York, and or possibly the most well-known recruiter in the EV space. I'm not sure if that's too much of a stretch, but I'm pretty sure it isn't. Sam Keay, welcome.
You didn't
Please,
tell me I was the first guest.
yeah, no pressure. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please,
Thank you for
can
having
you?
me.
Oh, this is an absolute honor. Please, can you give us a quick introduction? And as always, your best dad joke, please.
Well, thank you so much, James. I'm not sure if my introduction of myself is going to be as good as your one of me, but
Maybe you can do me instead. Introduce me
yeah,
next time.
maybe,
Okay,
maybe.
cool.
This guy, this social media famous guy from our very own LHi
Yeah,
Group.
stop.
No, I'm Sam Keay. I lead our renewable energy and clean tech brands out of our New York office. I've been with the LHi Group for just over 8 years now.
Wow.
Spent my first 2 years in London, under our Lawrence Harvey brand, and now, yeah, I see no turning back as it relates to the renewable energy and clean tech space.
And nor
And
should
if
you.
you really do want a dad joke from
Yes,
me, I
please.
emailed my team this morning and got sent a few.
Okay.
So
Who's responsible for this?
this one is from our very own Levi Myrtle.
Good. No pressure.
So, James, since you are a dad, when does a joke turn into a dad joke?
I don't know.
When it becomes apparent.
Very good. Very good.
Are you
Very
sure
good.
you get it?
I'm going to pretend like I did. So that's all that matters, right?
Okay, brilliant.
It's the way it's spelled.
Yes.
Anyway, um, again, really excited to have this conversation with you, Sam. And what an introduction. I think a lot of people in the business who either have worked with you or from afar are in awe of your trajectory. I've got to be careful what I say here because I know you might blush at some point, but yeah, just really excited to get underneath the bonnet of this and really get to know you a little bit better, and I guess just showcase a little bit more of your journey and how people can emulate a bit of that. So, how you got into recruitment? It's always a great story, right? You referenced that you started in London. It was actually
Yeah.
with Lawrence Harvey initially.
Hmm.
Can you walk us through a little bit of your entry point into LHI and what it was like?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd done an internship in between my second and final year of university at an executive search firm, which was a really great experience. I think I always knew that I wanted to do sales, and I'd done some other internships in more like traditional sales environments. And I realized depending on the product that you're selling, the lead time and the lead cycle can be really, really long. So, like one example in particular, I studied finance. So, I did an internship at a banking software company. And I
Okay.
quickly realized the products that they were selling, it could take them 18 months of whining and dining a
Mm,
banking client before it converted. And so when recruitment was introduced to me and I realized how much more fast paced it could be, and you could, bring on a client, place a job within a couple of months, I thought that that was the right sort of sales environment for me. So exec search was great, but I don't think that it's the most incredible place to start your career just because it is so high touch, and the level of trust and autonomy that you can get is probably lesser than a more traditional recruitment environment. So because I then rejoined that exec search firm post graduation and it didn't quite sit right fit wise, I wanted to make sure that I didn't make the same mistake again. So I actually interviewed with 13 recruitment companies in London.
wow.
Yeah, I couldn't even remember all the names of them right now because it was a very long time ago. But what stood out to me about LHI, and honestly, this sounds so cheesy, but it was the people. I honestly didn't really
Anyone in
care what
particular?
Mm,
Don't feel
I
like you need
mean,
to say certain people.
look, I think Tom Glanfield, our founder, was just coming back into the business after a bit of a break and having stepped away because we had an MD, and he was a very interesting character to say the least. He was super impressive. I did. There wasn't necessarily anybody in particular that I interviewed with aside from Anne-Marie because I obviously have to give her a shout out.
Hmm.
I think it was just the overall vibe of the office that I got. I walked in, there was house music playing, there were people like kicking balls around, but whilst working, whilst on the phone, and it felt like this amazing balance of clearly a professional environment where everyone's getting work done, but they're also having fun as well.
Hmm. I
Um,
mean, I'll jump in there and say that that probably doesn't sound too dissimilar to probably a lot of businesses. So when you're looking
yeah,
at 13, can you think of anything, I know you referenced the people, but is there anything in particular that stood out about? I mean, to go from 13 to one and, obviously referencing that you did an internship, it was a huge, can imagine it was a huge difference
yeah, it's
from
a massive
exec search
contrast. Yeah.
environment. What settled for you, LHI?
I think that I got the impression that a lot of the other businesses were just trying to sell to me and paint a really immaculate picture of their
Yeah.
trajectory and their history. And it's not that LHI didn't do that, but I believed in everyone that I was speaking to. I believed in where they'd gone, where they were going, and I just had so much belief in what they were saying to me as it relates to how I was going to be trained and how much support I was going to get. And also that I was hopefully going to have some fun along the way and maybe even make some friends, which of course I did. Maybe not in the first couple months.
Well, let's focus on that then. The first 6 months in recruitment.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
Jim, our CEO, talks very confidently about how poor he was at recruitment and how long it took for him to get to that point of seeing success. But I see in my line of work that that first 6 months is a real um, jump, right? It's
Yeah.
either you should have done this years ago and you take to it like a duck to water, or you're like, what have I done? This is absolutely not for me, and then you never go near recruitment again, right? How did you find it? And I guess you referenced that you were there for 2 years. I'm interested to hear not first 6 months, absolutely, but when it started to click for you
Yeah.
and yeah,
So I had a slightly different experience to our illustrious leader, Jim, in that my first 3 months, I got some early success. I remember the first client I signed was Boots Walgreens Alliance. So they're a huge
wow.
company. And I feel like they're a business that loads of people had tried to get in with. And so that sort of put me on the map in the office.
Mm,
And then it all just fell apart. That deal that I did dropped.
yeah,
The guy accepted a counter offer. I lost all of my confidence. And then I don't think I did a deal for like 4 months between month 3 and month 7.
okay.
Um,
Did your
which
background in exec search help at all in terms of
no,
that
no.
transition?
But I mean, I don't know how honest and open to be, but I obviously sold myself pretty well in the interview at
Sure.
LHI, but I was making teas and coffees and
Yeah.
booking meetings, writing adverts, and maybe formatting
Yeah,
CVs like
okay.
through that first 6 months. It wasn't recruitment.
Yeah, okay.
Um, but I think that I was able to articulate the fact that I've been in that sort of environment
Sure.
as a benefit to a prospective recruitment firm that was interested in giving me a job. Yeah, it took me, and you referenced the first 6 months. I think it took me way more than 6 months to figure out whether this was a career path for me. I think I used to wake up in the morning, get ready every day to do my commute into the city and wonder, what am I doing? Do I really want to do
Yeah.
this for the rest of my life? Or is this a career that even lends itself well to my skill set? Because at the time, a lot of our top performers were individuals that were amazing and good friends of mine now, but just not people that I could relate to. And you can't
What
be what
kept
you
you
can't
going?
see. Oh, what did keep me going? I think I had built
Because
some good relationships.
if you're not
Yeah.
seeing that success or even like nuggets of it,
Well, this
then
is probably quite a nice segue into what I imagine we'll talk about. But I knew that I always wanted to move abroad, and I knew
okay,
recruitment was a vehicle in order for me to be able to do that.
okay,
And
so
in
maybe
particular,
subconsciously that's the driver.
yeah, and in particular LHI. So that was definitely a motivator. But I think it was just I saw people having success at a very young age in our business, and I mean this in the best way possible, but I wasn't looking at them thinking,
Your God's gift.
wow,
Yeah.
you're a genius, or wow, you have some level of,
Which in a way is the
excellence.
beauty of recruitment as well, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, yeah, in answer to your question, what kept me going was I knew that if I stuck it out at some point, it was going to have to go my way because I was working hard.
Yeah,
Um, that combined with the fact that this could be a business that could create progression opportunities for me outside of what I was doing in the immediate vicinity, whether that be market, geography, office, etc. Um, and the opportunity to make money. I'd graduated. I was a year post graduation at this point, and whilst that sounds really funny now because a year is literally nothing, I didn't like the idea of starting again and doing
sure,
something completely different and then losing a year.
sure.
And luckily for me, it ended up working out finally.
So, 2 years in, Lawrence Harvey,
Yeah.
beg, borrowing, and stealing from what it sounds like to get yourself into position to get the call up.
hmm
How did that come about? And it sounded like your head was already there that you were going to go to the US at some point, which I think for a lot of people that is the case. For some people, it's not, and it just catches them by surprise. So
Yeah.
for you, give us a snapshot into your world at that point. How did it come about? What sort of things did you think about? I talk about relocation a lot, and it's about stepping outside your comfort zone. But it sounds like you were ready for this, but even before you were there. So help me understand, where you were at in your probably in your personal life, but also your book of business, so to speak, to be making the move.
Yeah. So obviously to reference my personal life just for a quick second, I obviously did follow somebody to New York.
Okay. Who
My
can we
boyfriend.
can we say that? Now
Yeah, I
fiance.
think so.
Yeah, nice. Well,
Fiance.
congratulations.
Um, yeah, he wanted to move to New York. He left me. He
So
left
we
me
have
for
him
New
to thank for
York.
all of this.
And I followed.
Okay.
So yeah, he was with a different business at the time and
Yeah.
a little bit older than me, so a little bit further along in his journey. And I decided to follow in his footsteps. Not against his will. I think he did want me to come as well. But yeah, so to set the scene, there was a formal process. You
Sure.
couldn't just put your hand up and say, "Hey, Botty, can you make sure that I get to move offices?" So,
Yeah.
um, I went on holiday to New York, and at the time, interviewed with four different leaders within the New York office. Um,
That's
Michael
intense.
Giorgio, Kev Cooley, Alex Cohen, and the leader of Cypro. It was intense. I think Jordan ended up calling me 5 times, thinking that I'd been like abducted or something. I was in,
All in the space.
yeah, it
Wow.
was
Talk
four.
about
I was
candidate
there for,
experience.
yeah. Sorry, maybe I'm not painting us in as amazing of a picture, but yeah, I was in our one and only meeting room in the Broad Street office for like nearly 5 hours.
Okay.
But whilst that might sound traumatic, it was such an incredible experience for me to get to know every single leader and for me to really feel like, regardless of which route I took, as long as they wanted me, they'd make it work and that there was a seat for me. And at the time, our New York office was on an upwards trajectory. So they were all painting a pretty exciting and compelling picture for me. But I got on with Alex Cohen from the get-go, and I'm so happy that out of the four options presented to me, that was the one that I ended up going with, which was, of course, at the time, to join as a senior consultant in what we were dubbing an electric vehicle division. So it was a
Okay.
brand new market for us as a business.
And we're talking, what year is this?
So interview happened in 2017,
Okay.
and I moved over on the 1st of March 2018.
Okay. Interesting. And actually, so reading into that then, so you weren't, maybe you were bought into the market, but it sounded like it was the individual in Alex that sold you the opportunity. Could have been
Yeah,
selling
yeah.
anything.
I knew nothing about renewable energy and or clean technology. I knew that, there was it was the future, and that it probably wasn't a bad market to be a part of. But yeah, I think that choice, and it was a mutual choice. I had multiple conversations with Mike Bott, who's our chief commercial officer. He wasn't at the time, he was leading the New York office. And I think um, it was like a mutual decision that I was happy to join Piper Maddox, and Alex was happy to have me.
Sure. Love that. So 7 years in New York.
Yeah, just over 6 years in New York it's
Okay.
been.
What has struck you the most about New York itself as a location? I've lived there not for a couple of years, right? And in unique circumstances, I'm sure you've seen it probably change quite a lot. What has stood out to you about New York as a place? What's kept you there for 6 years?
Yeah.
You see a lot of people jump around, me included, right?
Yeah, first of all, God knows, because I said to my boyfriend, I was like, I'll do 2 years, that's it. And then we're
Yeah.
going to West Coast or we're going home. And
Okay.
here I am 6 years later, we've bought a house and no signs of going home.
Wow.
New York is honestly such a special place. And I really, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. I don't think that you can experience New York and what it's like to live there on holiday. You absolutely can't. It's like no place in the world. There are not many cities where you have access to as many different things, and whether that's like social, cultural, culinary, activities, the arts, everything. And I think that I'll now find it probably quite difficult wherever I move afterwards, just because I think New York is on a bit of a pedestal in terms of its accessibility. Um, and because it's such a populated area and very dense, right? It's not big. Um, you can find something for anyone. I think in a city like New York, and in New York in particular. So yeah, it's an amazing place to spend your early, mid, late 20s,
Do
and
you,
many other decades, I'm sure.
yeah. Do you find that they say that New York is the London of the US, the just how busy it is, right? And I haven't worked in London
Mm,
for a long period of time, but for someone who was there for 2 years prior to going out to New York, do you find that by being in New York now and that lifestyle that you live, do you find that it difficult to transition, or not that you're in one place for too long, but do you find it, just where you've got, from my understanding, you've got everything
yeah.
accessible all the time. Do you find that difficult? Do you find it frustrating when you're in other places?
Yeah, 100%. If I'm waiting more than 6 minutes for an Uber, I'm like, what the hell is going on? How do people live like this? But no, jokes aside, look, everyone draws that comparison, and I've only ever lived in big cities.
Mm,
So perhaps in the context of the world, New York and London are very, very similar. But
yeah.
in my experience, from having lived in both places and not lived somewhere, that's perhaps an opposite example, I think that there are a ton of differences. London's a lot more spread out, New York's a lot smaller. Um, New York is, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week craziness. London does go to sleep.
Yeah. And I'm going to try and draw a parallel to that in terms of trying to understand your trajectory because, you know, anyone looks at your LinkedIn profile or anyone knows you, the journey that you've had has been pretty I want to use the word aggressive. I'm going to use that word. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, but
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
it's very steep in terms of going from being a senior consultant in what sounded like you were just putting together some names in terms of a market to go and build
Yeah. Had
something.
no idea what I was doing.
Yeah. So to where you are now as, you know, brand leader of New York and, you know, leading, and I'll let you kind of give us the overview of what it looks like at the moment. Do you do you think that New York played a part in that for you in terms of that
A
need and want
hundred
to
percent.
that next thing, that next thing?
100%. Yeah. I think that there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost, I was 23 when I moved to New York.
Mm,
And so I felt like I had nothing to lose. And maybe that was a good thing, but it also made me work as hard as I possibly could because I didn't really have many fears because I felt that I was still in a place where, okay, well, if it goes wrong, I can just go home. Like
yeah,
the stakes were low,
yeah.
which, the flip side of that, maybe when the stakes are high, people would say that you would end up being more successful. But for me, the I I
What have
wasn't
you got to
putting
lose?
too much pressure on it.
Yeah,
And I think, beyond that, we've changed a lot as a business. And I think, even in the last 6 years, society has probably changed quite dramatically. Um, I didn't have many friends, so there wasn't that many like extracurricular things for me to do other than work,
yeah.
maybe go to the gym, and hang out with my colleagues. And so that all-encompassing environment that is by no means sustainable served me so well for my first year.
Sure. Interesting. So how does your life, and this is a big jump, your life, but your role now differ to what it was when you stepped into New York? You waited in that extremely long queue for the first time and very nervousness at the embassy, sorry, the passport control, hoping that you'll get in. Anne Marie painted this really bad picture that I'm going to get grilled, and I didn't. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no,
what?
I think they manage your expectations right,
Yeah,
but
probably. Yeah,
generally we've
yeah.
done pretty well as a business.
Yeah, we have.
Um,
So how does your role and your life now differ? Let's go with your role. So you're a senior consultant. How big
mhm.
was Pipermatics at that point? And kind of try and give us an overview of where you are
Yeah.
now.
So we were four people,
Okay,
and in no other offices in the US. Now, of course, we have four offices. At the time, we just had New York and LA, but LA didn't have Hypermatic's presence
sure,
yet. To today, we're now, I think, over 70 heads across the four US offices and, a number of others across Europe. Um, so as a senior consultant, I only have myself to rely on, and the support from Alex Cohen, but it's about just scrapping for what I can. And luckily, the market was so buoyant, and I was so lucky. And I think our proposition was so well received that it just exploded. To now, I'm responsible for 25 other odd great humans, as I guess the leader within our New York office. And so whilst I am still commercially focused, my day to day and my expectations of myself, and I think the expectations from the business of me are to concentrate on making the people that I'm responsible for maximum levels of happy and maximum levels of successful, and striking that balance appropriately for everyone. So it's a completely different role to what I was doing 6 years ago, and a completely different role to what I was doing 4 years ago. And probably a little bit more internally facing than I've ever been. And that might
is that
pivot
an aspect that you
again.
enjoyed?
Yes, yes. If anyone on my team ever listens to this, yes, they're who get me up every day. But um, I think I've always thrived in the commercially focused aspect of what recruitment is as a function.
Sure.
So one day, and I've got, my sights on just making sure that I can make Piper Maddox New York the best and healthiest possible brand it can be for now, for at least the next couple of years. But beyond that, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up taking something that allows me to be more commercially focused again long term.
Fantastic. And from a personal perspective, um, how has your life changed in 6 years? You referenced that you bought a house. How does your life differ now? Obviously, from what I understand and from what I see, you're all over the US, going to different conferences, speaking at events, etc., which just highlights the level that you've been able to get to in your career through the lens of the renewables and clean energy space. How has that affected you in terms of, I guess, let me rephrase this question. Going from where you were as a senior consultant, how do you prepare yourself to that exposure that you're going to get? And do you pinch yourself of how far you've come in that time, and how does that affect you in your outside of work? If you can
Yeah, and I think
piece that together.
walking into this opportunity, again, as I said, I had nothing to lose. And so I did just give it my all. But I don't think I had ever anticipated that I would have been able to be part of an environment that afforded me the opportunity to scale the heights that I have in such quick succession. So yeah, obviously for most people, key milestones are paying off your student loans, buying your first house, big ticket purchases, or holidays, or the first time that you're able to treat your family to something significant. Those are all milestones that I have been lucky enough to achieve, probably quicker than I had anticipated. And I genuinely do feel like LHi and Piper Maddox and just the opportunity that's been afforded to me are what I have to thank for, um, for those things. So yeah, I mean, pinch me moment sounds a bit grandiose, but you're probably right. It just feels uncomfortable to say. Um, but I think the best thing and what has kept me here so long is you can absolutely celebrate those moments. But the ceiling is continually being lifted for me and for my peers and for my colleagues. So, once you've done something, once you've achieved something, you don't just sit there and like bask in it all and just, take the rest of the year off. It's okay, what's next? What do you want to do next? How much further can we take this? What milestones do you want to tick off now? And I think the biggest regret that I have, and I don't have many, um, it's just in 2019 when things started to really go crazy. Um, I was still only like 25 at the time, and I wish I just had, or maybe 24, one of the 20s.
Yeah,
I wish I'd had more lofty goals. I'm a under promise and over deliver type of character, whereas a lot of recruiters out there are shoot for the stars and see where you land.
sure.
And so for me, I didn't really want to set goals for myself that I thought were unachievable or unlikely.
Where does that
I'd
come from?
rather, I don't
Getting
know.
deep.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah, I just don't want to disappoint anyone. So, at the beginning of the year, you're often asked, oh, how much money do you want to bill?
Mm.
I'll always go in low, 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 low,
Yeah,
low,
yeah,
as
yeah,
low as I possibly can. And usually overachieve, which isn't actually all that impressive when you think about it. You probably want to be realistic.
yeah,
And so the balance of myself and someone who's a bit more aspirational is probably the perfect place to be.
yeah. Fantastic insight. Um, so we're going to move slightly on to, I guess, referencing a bit of the back where you've come from, which you've elegantly gone through, and it's new for me to hear some of that as well, which is great. But also where you're going, and you referenced a bit of that before. Jim, again, our CEO, and well known within the business, right, that we have the concepts of the younger you and the future you. Um, we referenced it on the initial podcast about the shoes and obviously where the name for this podcast has come
Hmm.
from. But what do those concepts mean to you, the younger you concept and the future you concept? What do they mean to you, and give us some context around perhaps where that's come from and what it's done for you.
I think for me, it's been about ensuring that we're a business who's striving to create an environment that is continually and consistently better for each new person who joins our business. So, for example, the first wave of consultants that joined the New York office, like the founding team, right? The
Sure.
Michael Giorgio, the Mike Bott, Ben Richardson, and I'm sure a few others who I've missed and would be offended. Um, I don't profess to have been that founding team because I know that it was must have been incredibly hard to join to start in a new office where we have no presence and at the time no physical presence, right? They incubated for a
Yeah.
number of months working US hours from the UK. And so in my head, their job was whatever work they did was then going to make it easier for the next wave. And I class myself as probably that second or third wave.
Okay.
And then my job, whilst easier than theirs, was still, of course, really difficult within its own right. You know, I was setting up a market where we didn't have a single candidate or client on the database, and I didn't know what I was doing or what the definitions or the intricacies of the market were. And so, whilst my journey wasn't their journey, that was what I needed to do, and that was how I needed to achieve and progress in order to make it easier for the next wave of individual and so on
Sure.
and so forth. So yeah, there's definitely some circularity to it. But that's what the younger you means to me.
How do you do that now? Put you on the spot, but in the level that you are, where you have, as you rightly said, 25 great humans. I'm fortunate to have spoken and worked with a few of those to bring them into your team. Um, how do you do that at your level now? Because I think it's a concept that I wholeheartedly agree on, and I think a number, if not all, of the people that I speak to in the market buy into the concept. But how can they feel that from a leader like yourself, or if they're
Yeah.
stepping into that into a position similar to you, how are they able to do that? Thinking about perhaps past experiences, we roll back the years to that first realistically 12 months as you described. Who do you pull from that stands out for you that has can help you in the role that you are now, right? That perhaps helped you then.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and it's probably something that I should think about more. We've been talking a lot lately about, wanting to ensure that we're developing our team on their business, not in their business, right?
Sure.
And I think there's a real difference there.
Mm,
Um, so I think it's about ensuring that every single person with management responsibility is empowered to build something the way that they want to build it and the way that they feel is going to be most successful for them and their immediate team. Um, I think the worst type of leader you can be, and this is definitely like I've had my moments of it, is when you're just telling and you're just saying this is how you should do it. This is, this is what you need to do
yeah.
and this is why. And so I think taking that into the context of the younger you philosophy, you'd be doing anyone a disservice if you didn't actually then empower them to figure out in their own way how
Sure.
to be doing that for the layer,
So not necessarily make it
around them.
easier, just make it smoother for them to
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Easy is a really tough one, isn't it?
Mm,
Because there's going to be an end to that because you
yeah.
can't just then get to a point where, you know, our clients are just printing money for
Yeah.
us or
Which it sounds like they
um
are, but yeah, yeah.
well,
Yeah.
maybe for a moment we we
Perception is
we
reality.
we rode some of the waves of that. Yeah, I think
And
it's not easier, it's better. It's
yeah.
yeah, more diverse, more inclusive, more fulfilling. Yeah, improvements, continuous improvement, which I know is such a overused phrase.
And the future you, that kind of is tied. I don't think we've spoken about it yet. So it's tied to, guess in my mind, it's legacy, right? Firstly, is legacy important to you?
Oh, yeah. I think legacy is important to me in a sense of ensuring that the value that I'm contributing has more than like the immediacy of it to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um, but I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm the type of person that wants to be like remembered beyond my years. I think that it's really cool to be able to pave a path for someone and to be the first person to do something and therefore make it, and but I'm drawing back to the younger you here,
yeah,
but therefore make it easier for the next person to then achieve that milestone.
sure, sure. Yeah, and as you rightly said, it's something that goes hand in hand, right? To know where you're going, you need to know where you've come from, right? Which I think is what makes those analogies work so well. Getting to the end of this, so again, I really appreciate your time, and I've genuinely enjoyed every moment other than the little one interrupting. Last year, well, let's go back a little bit. It seems like certainly if you look at the org chart of Pipermatics, it's had year-on-year growth. And as you rightly said, from New York to now having a presence across every one of our US offices, uh, every one of our UK offices, Bristol is only Pipermatics, which is a sign of how far that's come. And work that they're doing into Europe too is crazy to see. Last year, it basically seems like it hasn't stopped, it hasn't slowed down. Unlike, for example, last year the tech market, it wasn't great for a lot of people. But coined the phrase this year, the year of the goose. I've tried to elegantly describe it on LinkedIn posts, and I just don't think you can. And even I think when I speak to candidates, I can't
Yeah, I've
really
brought it
make.
up in interviews and
Yeah,
then been embarrassed afterwards,
yeah.
thinking, what on earth must they think that I'm talking about?
But the goose analogy is one that for me resonates, right? And it's
A
a
hundred
cheesy
percent.
analogy for sure. But what does this year and what does the year of the goose mean for you? Probably personally and professionally, but how is that sat with you this year in terms of Pipermatics and Sam within that?
Yeah, I think obviously in the like with the responsibility that I have now, Jim said to me once last year, nothing that one person does can break the company. I think just, to relieve some of that pressure that we all feel, you know, particularly in New York, that nothing you do can really mess up the business that badly, although Ed Parks may have a different
Yeah.
opinion. And I think the flip side of that, that then means that not one single person can be like the hero of our business. And so being a goose and having goosey behavior means that you have acknowledgement, respect, and understanding that the more your colleagues are winning, the more you're winning. And that, what we're able to achieve as a collective is like exponentially greater than the equal sum of our parts.
Yeah.
Um, that's what being goosey means to me. And beyond that, blurring the lines between friends and colleagues. Not that, we're ever going to force anyone to opt into how we operate as a culture, but choosing to be part of LHi means that you're not signing up to just be a sole trader managing your
Mm,
own business unit. If you wanted to do that, then, good luck, but you may as well just then go and set up your own recruitment business, right?
yeah.
So you need to be up for it to opt into all the benefits that I think are available to you from being part of the LHI culture. And one of those things is goosey behavior.
Yeah. And I think that signing up to when we talk about the concept of signing up to LHI and what you're buying into, I reference every time it's about the people. And I think you've referenced that there too. And I think Jim talks about the stardust, which is all about, the feel of the business. It's, I see, I just did a post today actually about having gone to the last office, well, our eighth office, or my last office of all the offices we have, and Berlin have got it in abundance. Sometimes you can't tangibly say what it is. It's just the environment. It's how the people act. How would you describe the stardust within New York, and specifically within your brand? And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, actually, when we took a briefing call for one of your roles, which might be worth mentioning at some point on here as a
Okay.
little plug. But what, if you were to use three words to describe that stardust,
Can you not
um,
make me do it in 3 words? I'm not
okay,
good at
all right,
that.
I won't.
Okay, I'll give you one example.
Yeah,
From a cultural standpoint, as I said earlier, we blur the lines between friends and colleagues. One of the things that I love when I walk into our New York office or when I see us, hanging out on a Friday is outside of work, um, we're a collection of individuals that might not necessarily have been friends, coming from different backgrounds, having gone to different schools, different education levels, different interests even. Yet we are part of an environment that I think is special enough that it's allowed us to befriend and find common ground, not just the common ground that we both work at LHi, but common ground that I hang out, have fun, and spend time and get to learn from people that I never thought that I would have traditionally have befriended or have built a relationship with. So I think that's part of it. Um,
that's
and yeah,
powerful.
good humans. Uh, I say in interviews, and I genuinely mean this, you could be $1 million biller, $2 million biller if you want, but if you're not a good person, this isn't the right environment for you. Again, obviously everyone would want a $1 million plus biller in their team, but yeah, I think you do have to be and want to be a good person to work
Amen to that. Amen to that.
here.
Right, so we're on our last question. And this one is a signature one, hopefully, that will follow suit in every interview that we do here. And it's based on the younger you for sure, but I want to kind of take you back to that moment of you starting in New York when there's four of you in Piper Maddox, and you're starting to build something out, and you know knowing where the brand has gone in itself, and also where you've gone in your life personally or professionally. What's one piece of advice you'd give yourself? I know you referenced that 24, 25 mark, but what one piece of advice would you give yourself, if you were in those shoes again?
I'd give myself a lot of advice because I did a lot of things wrong. But I think for me, it would be don't take it too seriously. Um, I
Can
think
I
the
can I
most
argue that and say that if you didn't, you wouldn't have got to where you are? Or am I?
maybe, but I think, I spent so much energy and like exertion and calories on worrying. Is
Okay.
this person going to take the job? Is this client going to choose me? That was all energy that could have
Yeah.
been spent increasing the amount of chances that I was giving myself. So it
Mm,
didn't matter if that candidate
interesting.
took the job, and it didn't matter if that client chose to work with me because I was just creating as many opportunities for myself as possible and not holding weight and putting so much pressure on like that one chance. It's obviously so much easier said than done, but yeah, I think I probably would have told myself to smile a bit more and enjoy it. And yeah, don't take it too seriously. Whilst I commend this career path, we're not heart surgeons, we're not rocket scientists, and nothing we can do will break the company.
I really like that piece of advice you gave yourself. I think that's a nugget for anyone to take away from this. So I appreciate that. And yeah, overarchingly, I really appreciate the time that you've given with us. You didn't plug the role, which I'm really annoyed
Yeah,
about you
well,
for doing,
okay,
but
I'm
give
sorry.
give me a 30-second elevator pitch of what we've got going on in New York at the moment.
So we have a few roles across all brands, but obviously selfishly, I'm going to talk about Piper Maddox. If you've got this far, you probably know who we are to an extent, and in terms of the markets that we operate in. But yeah, we're on a crazy trajectory and showing no signs of slowing. We are growing across all segments within key accounts, hydrogen and clean fuels, solar, e-mobility, circular economy, just to name a few of them. And we're looking for entry level and experienced talent. So if you're interested, reach out to James
Or
or
Taylor,
me
or
or
Sam,
Taylor or
or any
anyone.
of the rest of the TA
Yeah.
team. Cool. Um, well, absolute pleasure, Sam. I think I learned a few things about you, and I think I've known you for a relatively long time now. So, an absolute pleasure. Feel free to connect with Sam on LinkedIn. Her bark is worse than her bite, so feel free to reach out to her if you're just interested in all things clean energy or New York. I'm sure she'd pass on a lot more advice on that side of things. As always with this, if I can ask that you can please like, share, and feel free to rate the dad joke.
Oh, please don't. But I'll blame Levi if it gets a low
Well,
score.
you chose it, so it's on you, I'm afraid, Sam. But yeah, wanted to thank everyone for listening to this podcast or watching it. Apologies for the little one, but that is the nature of dad life, right? So keeping it real, I guess, is what we can take from that. Next up, we've got Melissa, who's going to be talking all things EU tech and relocations, which is going to be a really exciting one. And yeah, as always, Sam's mentioned a couple of roles that we have there in New York for Piper Maddox. Check out our website for more opportunities. Thanks again.